Top 15 Steelers ever.
Number 15, Ernie Stautner. Now, when this play happened on December 23rd, 1972, most of Steelers Nation conveniently forgot all about Steelers football before 1972, which means they conveniently forgot about this man, Ernie Stautner. And look at that beautiful mug. Though he was only 6'1", 235 pounds, Stautner was one of the most ferocious defensive linemen of the 1950s. And check this out. In 14 seasons, Stautner only missed 6 games, was selected to 9 Pro Bowls, was a first ballot Hall of Famer, and is still the only Pittsburgh Steeler to have his jersey number retired. Kind of like how the Immaculate Reception makes us forget about Steelers football before 1972, the awesomeness of Hall of Fame center Mike Webster sometimes makes us forget about the awesomeness of this man right here. Number 63, Dermontti Dawson, who was the human equivalent of this. Dawson played 13 seasons, was named to 7 straight Pro Bowls, and remember, there is no Bam. There is no Slash, and there is no Bus without Dermontti Dawson. And speaking of the latter, if this was a popularity contest, you might have to scribble off that number 3 for Jerome Bettis, a man so popular with his teammates that they honored him before Super Bowl 40 by wearing his Notre Dame college jersey. Even USC diehard Troy Polamalu. If Dermontti Dawson was a human snowplow, that would make Jerome Bettis a human bus, and well, that's why they called him the Bus. Now, when you think of a bus, you think of power and plodding, but this bus also had speed. Look at him go! If a school bus driver went this fast, they would throw them in jail. Jerome Bettis is the NFL's 5th all-time leading rusher, and he ended his career in Hollywood screenplay style by winning, you got it, the Super Bowl. Next stop, Canton.
Top 15 Steelers ever.
Number 12, Mel Blount. And let's be blunt. In today's football, cornerbacks, they're tiny. What if Chad Ochocinco or, say, Terrell Owens had to stare down the 6'3" mountain of muscle known as Mel Blount? A man who made a living punishing and brutalizing wide receivers. Ouch! Mel Blount was so good that in 1978 they actually changed the rules of professional football, prohibiting cornerbacks from getting physical with wideouts after 5 yards, which still gave Mel Blount 5 yards to inflict pain. Not only was Blount a nightmare for receivers, but he was also a nightmare for quarterbacks. He leads the Steelers franchise with 57 career interceptions. He also owns 4 Super Bowl rings, a Hall of Fame blazer, and is the main reason small little fast dudes have cornerback jobs in the NFL. In his signature Stetson hat, number 47 runs the Mel Blount Youth Home, a shelter for victims of child abuse and neglect. At number 11, a man who brought the grace of ballet to the football field, Lynn Swann. And though he played less than a decade, was there a better big game receiver than Lynn Swann? I mean, this man could catch anything. He could catch a frozen beach ball dipped in olive oil. And after getting knocked out silly in the 1975 AFC Championship, Lynn Swann, he only came back 1 game later to make the most famous catch in NFL history. Every time NFL Films shows this footage, they should give royalties to Lynn Swann. And how about this catch? And oh, by the way, in this game, Lynn Swann won Super Bowl MVP and then 25 years later was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In time now to tag in your fellow Steeler Hall of Fame wideout, number 10, John Stallworth. Continue. All right, so maybe John Stallworth didn't have the highlight reel that Lynn Swann had, although this was a nice catch. Tippy toes in double coverage. And then there was this Super Bowl catch. And if we could freeze that for a second, look how iconic. That should have been on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Oh, it was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. But John didn't make the sweet catches like Lynn did. That's pretty sweet, and that's pretty freaking unbelievable. All right. So during his career, no Stiller wideout had more catches, yards, and touchdowns than John Stallworth. So yeah, when he retired in 1987, after snagging catches from this guy, he was the greatest Stillers wide receiver ever.
Top 15 Stillers ever.
Number 9, Troy Polamalu. The first safety ever drafted in the first round by the Stillers. And I think it's safe to say, the best to ever play the position in Pittsburgh. I mean, come on, people. In the 2000s, Troy redefined the NFL safety as part linebacker, part defensive lineman, part cornerback, part heat-seeking missile, part sure-handed wide receiver, part punk rock stage diver, part family man, part shampoo spokesperson, part halfback, part Jimmy Superfly Snuka, part spiritual shaman, and in Super Bowl 40, he tried to be part short yardage fullback.
Give it to me, I'll take it over the top, coach.
I know. If it's 4th down, though, I'm going for it. It's less than a yard.
Let me go over the top, coach.
In crunch time, Troy also made one of the most famous interceptions in Stillers history that wasn't an interception, although it really was. And when the Stillers offense froze up in the 2008 AFC Championship game, Troy picked off a pass and decided to ice the game himself. And while all of this was going on, Troy somehow had the presence of mind to point to his young baby boy sitting in the stands. Number 8, Terry Bradshaw. Now, before he was this Terry Bradshaw or this Terry Bradshaw, he was this Terry Bradshaw. Inconsistent Stiller quarterback who experienced tough love from both the fans and his coach. And I know it's hard to believe now, but during the Stillers' first Super Bowl run in 1974, Terry Bradshaw actually started the season as a backup. But here's the thing, Bradshaw was a big game performer. He loved to bask in the bright lights of the Super Bowl, a game in which he won 4 times and was MVP twice. And you probably also know that he is on the front end of some of the most famous catches in NFL history, even ones that were a wee bit off the mark. Terry Bradshaw is a Hall of Famer and one of the greatest Super Bowl QBs of all time. Terry, take it away.
When the weather gets cold, the black and gold are gonna be Super Bowl bound, 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 bound. Oh, jeez.
Number 7, Mike Webster. Now let's talk numbers. 15 Stiller seasons, 220 Stiller games, 177 in a row. 1970s All-Decade Team, 1980s All-Decade Team. And at 6'1", 255 pounds, not huge for an offensive lineman, Mike Webster spent a career moving men the size of this. And don't forget, many of the Super Stiller plays started with Mike Webster, whether he was clearing space for Franco, blocking for Rocky, or giving Terry and Lynn time to do their thing. No one has played more games for the Stillers than Mike Webster, who was the last of the Super Stillers to leave the burgh. If you call Mike Webster the greatest center in the history of professional football, you might be right.
Top 15 Stillers ever.
Number 6, Rod Woodson. Arguably the greatest pure athlete in Stillers history and the best Stillers kick return specialist that I've ever seen. Rod also liked to intercept passes. He ranks 3rd on the NFL's all-time list, and he ranks number 1 for doing this, running them back for touchdowns. And kiddies, you should know, Hall of Famer Rod Woodson, he was fast, he was greased lightning in the cockpit of a fighter jet. The only thing that could slow him down was the stupid turf at Three River Stadium. In 1995, he tore his ACL in the Stillers' home opener, only to return that same season in Super Bowl 30, a game in which the Stillers beat the Cowboys. They just didn't score as many points as them. And oh, by the way, this man right here concedes that Rod Woodson is the greatest cornerback in Stillers history. Number 5, Jack Ham. All right, so if you don't know what a photobomb is, let me explain. It's when someone, seemingly out of nowhere, appears in your picture. Well, think of Jack Ham as the football equivalent of a photobomb. Where there was a football, you could find Jack Ham. And legend has it that he never ever made a mistake on the football field. He was always in the right place at the right time, even if he wasn't the center of the highlight. And that's probably why he's in the Hall of Fame, went to 8 straight Pro Bowls, owns 4 Super Bowl rings, and is the greatest outside linebacker to ever play the game of football. And a quick little side note, Jack Ham is also the first Stiller to ever appear on Yinz Luv Da Stillers. Number 4, Hines Ward, a wide receiver who plays as if he was a member of the Steel Curtain defense. Without question, Hines Ward is the hardest hitting, best blocking wide receiver pro football has ever seen. And just because he plays with the tenacity of Jack Lambert doesn't mean he lacks the grace of Lynn Swann, the productivity of John Stallworth, or even the ability to toss a touchdown pass like Terry Bradshaw. And like the Super Stillers before him, does Hines Ward have a Super Bowl moment? You better believe it. And even though this makes for a better picture, I will never forget Hines Ward's catch in Super Bowl 43. And if we could pause that for a second. Go back 2 weeks earlier, Hines Ward sprained his right MCL. So in a position known for glitz, Hines Ward defined it by grit, some tears, and a whole bunch of smiles.
Top 15 Steelers ever.
Number 3, Franco Harris, who has the greatest play in Stillers history with the Immaculate Reception. The greatest fan club in Stillers history with Franco's Italian Army. And one of the greatest entertainers in history was a general in the greatest fan club for the greatest running back in Stillers history. And if it were not for this man, Franco may even have the best head of hair in Stillers history. If quote-unquote Stillers football is running down your opponent's throat, then credit Franco Harris for creating Stillers football. Franco went to 9 straight Pro Bowls. He had 8 seasons where he rushed for over 1,000 yards. When Franco retired, he was the NFL's 3rd all-time leading rusher. Franco Harris was the MVP of Super Bowl 9, and even though everybody likes to talk about the Immaculate Reception, do not forget about this 4th quarter 3rd down run that helped the Stillers become the first franchise to win 3 Super Bowls. All right, everybody close your eyes. Now I want you to picture a Stiller in your head. You got one? Good. Okay, now open your eyes. Was this who you were thinking of? Me too, and at number 2, Jack Lambert, the missing-toothed, quarterback-breaking, bone-rattling, nightmare-inducing, pile-driving, middle linebacker extraordinaire. Let's face it, he was the definitive Pittsburgh Stiller. Did anybody look better in black and gold than Jack Lambert? And even though he pretty much led the Stillers in tackles every year, went to 9 straight Pro Bowls and won 4 Super Bowls, his most famous play wasn't even a play. In Super Bowl 10, after Roy Jarrella missed a very makeable field goal, Cliff Harris mocked him, and then, well, Jack Lambert took matters into his own hands. And Jack Lambert, he would stick up for the little guy even if he wasn't on the playing field. And you can ask the Cincinnati Bengals about that. So for those too young to remember, all you really need to know is that Jack Lambert, he was a bad dude. Number 1, Mean Joe Greene. Who's Joe Greene? I will tell you, he is the bedrock, the cornerstone, the foundation, the big daddy, the backbone of the Steel Curtain, the life force and leader of the Super Stillers. With his 6'4", 275-pound frame, Mean Joe Greene brought a winning attitude to not only the Stillers, but to the city of Pittsburgh as well. And it is football fact that Joe Greene could not be beaten one-on-one. In getting hit by Mean Joe Greene, it was like getting run over by a Mack truck custom built by God. Joe Greene didn't rip heads off literally, but he almost did. Mean Joe Greene is the greatest Stiller because without him, you have no Super Stiller swagger. You have no rings, and you have no franchise that is the gold standard of the Super Bowl era. So like that little kid said in the famous Coke commercial, wow, thanks Mean Joe.